Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. The Chinese have started a new game in Ladakh. It's the air game. We've heard of their fighters coming pretty close to the line of control, and in one odd instance, somewhere skimming close to the confidence building line, which has been maintained by both the forces in that region. What is happening? Is this just a tactical activity, a strategic message, or a much larger picture than that? I wanted to understand. So I have here Air Marshal Anil Khosla, who's going to take us through this particular mystery that the Chinese have just started. And who better to learn than a former Vice Chief of the Indian Air Force? Sir, thank you so much for joining me. A lot of debate about this subject, and I would go out on a limb and say very little understanding.
Yeah, Aadi, thanks a lot for getting me on your show again, and a very valid and current topic. And actually, it's not only now, last 5 to 7 years or so, there have been rapid changes in the China's attitude, China's actions, and it's not only defense services. There are a lot of other activities, developments, infrastructure. Well, if you join the dots, all the dots, then a bigger picture emerges. Okay, and the idea is to read the signs, and you will get the writing on the wall. All right, and based on that, you need to devise your plan and strategy to deal with it. We need to understand what's going on, come to terms with the reality, and make plans immediate, midterm, as well as long term. Yeah, let's discuss the topic.
Let's begin, sir. The recent air, I won't call them incursions, for a very funny reason, everybody's calling them incursions, but I would call it the recent aggressive air actions taken by China in close to the line of control. My first question would be to establish a little bit of a history, sir. Has this happened before? Do these guys conduct such actions / exercises / maneuvers in this particular region? And how do you analyze this particular subset of news that is coming out?
Yeah, so very rightly you said, it's not an incursion. I mean, we use these terms very, very loosely. Like last episode, if you remember, we discussed air superiority, air supremacy, control of the air. So similarly, to my mind, incursion is a stronger word for what is going on at the moment. In my opinion, I think it is a third level. The first level would be a violation. And violation of what? Maybe agreement. And agreement generally is that fighters, class of platforms, the aircraft, don't come less than 10 kilometers from the delineated border or whatever line you have decided. Okay, so first step would be a violation of that agreement. That means you come less than 10 kilometers. You're still not crossed into our airspace. The second level would be violation of the airspace. That means the boundary which you have decided. Okay, and why I'm saying violation is it may be deliberate, it may be inadvertent, but there is no hostile activity or intent at the moment. The third stage would be incursion. In my opinion, I mean, incursion is a entry into your airspace with a little bit of hostile intent, but not a full-fledged war or operation. And then a full-fledged war, and in case you come into the airspace, I would call it invasion. So I would call it, violation of agreement, violation of airspace, incursion, and then invasion. So you're very right. I don't think this is an incursion. This is an air activity which is going on across the border. All right. And another issue is with China, with the border has not been clearly delineated. So what happens in this thing? It is disputed. I mean, whether the line is here or there. So in that case, what happens is it becomes a matter of perception. But either way, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is the activity level has increased. Okay, and we cannot ignore it. We need to take cognizance of it. We need to do something about it. Okay, now your question was that earlier also it has happened, not happened. Well, if you see last 7 years, first Chumar incident took place, then Dolam incident took place, then Galwan took place 2 years back, right? And all these ground actions when took place, they were associated with some kind of air activity at that time also. But that air activity was limited to helicopters, maybe utility helicopters flying around in the area. So what is happening was the air activity was a low-key type. But what is happening recently, like in this case, at Dolam time also a lot of air activity took place. We were monitoring everything and we were taking appropriate actions. But now, what is happening now is 25th June onwards, fighter class of aircraft, J-11 and all, flying close to the borderline, picked up by the R radars. Okay, then repeated after that because they're carrying out exercise in that area. And while the corps commander level talk was going on, also this activity was going on. So what has happened now is recently is the nature of air activity has changed. It is not restricted to utility helicopters. It is maybe more lethal helicopters attack or and may not be armed, but still, and fighter class of aircraft, AD weapons ahead. So the air activity, the level of air activity has increased and the quantum of air activity has increased. So fighters are involved, helicopters are involved, high altitude operations are going on, they're carrying out exercise, okay, and joint exercise that too, them carrying out day and night activity. So they have activated the advanced AD weapons and sensors. Then if you take the overall picture, not only air activity, ground activity, and infrastructure development. So if you see all this in totality, you get the picture that the aggressiveness or the boldness is increased. So short answer to your question is yes, the recent earlier also activity took place, but there is a drastic change in the quantum of air activity and the type of air activity in the recent occurrence which is taking place. Yeah, Adi.
So there'll be two aspects of this entire thing when we look at it. One will be the tactical theater sort of a operation that you'll be talking about, where there would be probably a 3-level or a 4-level analysis of the situation, tracking, intent, response, or whatever, however you may want to put it down. But at a strategic level as well, I'd like you to comment on both of them, sir. What is this? Is this strategic messaging? Is this a threat? Is this ramping of activity due to external issues which may or may not include India? How do you look at it, sir?
Yeah. So if I have to give a very short answer, I think it's all in one. Whatever you mentioned, everything in it. Okay, I'll answer your question in 3 parts. One is, what are the changes which are taking place in PLA Air Force? Okay, in the last 5 to 7 years. Then secondly, what are the possible reasons of such a high level of air activity? What could be the possible reason? Not specific to this, but generally, what are the possible reasons? And third, I will answer your question whether it's a threat, it is a strategic messaging, or it is some other ploy, or what is it? So starting with the first. So if you see, as I mentioned in the intro also, the PLAF in the last 5 to 7 years has been, capability-wise, capability-wise, marching way ahead, fast at a rapid pace. So firstly, let's see, infrastructure. All across infrastructure are being developed, operating surfaces, airfield, dual-use airfields, by civil as well as military. The runways are being extended, the tarmacs are being created, aircraft shelters are being created, even underground reports have come, underground shelters and all. Then heliport and drones are being constructed for helicopter operations. So if you see, the infrastructure development is going on for air activity. Then secondly, the training status has improved quite a bit. The activities which they were scared of doing during Dolam, now they're doing it. The skill levels of their crew is being enhanced. The tactics, they are following certain type of latest tactics which they were ignorant earlier. Okay, their approach has become bold. Like earlier days, the pilot didn't have much of autonomy, but now I believe a lot of leeway has been given to the pilot to take command of the situation and take independent decisions. High altitude operations have increased, and it is not only in the good weather time. Earlier winters, very harsh conditions, they used to go back, but now in most of the airfields, they are certain amount of presence is there. They're maintaining high altitude in extreme conditions also. Day and night, both operations are going on. So if you, whatever I've said so far, if you look into it, you realize that PLAF capability building is increasing at a quite rapid pace. And what we used to say that the advantages what we had, I mean, they're narrowing down the gaps. They're very in a focused manner, and they're addressing all these issues one by one. Okay, now let's come to the second part of what could be the possible reasons of such a activity close to the border. So one is when you make new infrastructure, obviously you would like to activate that infrastructure, because unless you activate, you won't come to know the finer points which need to be refined in the infrastructure. Second is if you have made new tactic concepts, you would like to prove your concepts. So what better way of doing it? Conduct exercise, a realistic exercise in that area, and prove your concepts. So exercises tend to increase, and exercises not only alone in the air as well as joint exercises with the surface forces. Then you need to enhance your op capability. Unless you operate in those conditions, your crew skill levels will not increase. Okay, so air crew training. So these are the possible reasons. Now these are with relation to capability. Now we come to the possible reasons with relation to intent. Okay, so one is you try and probe. Everyone does it. You try and probe the enemy response. You try and probe and see what sort of air defense capability does he have. You try and probe and see where all has he deployed by various electronic and surveillance means. So that is one. Then second is what you also mentioned, strategic signaling. Okay, either in peacetime or during hostility, strategic coercion. And I call it colloquially, I can call it aerial muscle flexing. Okay, so these are the possible reasons. Okay, in my mind, it is a combination of all these factors. Okay, that is why he's doing it, and he's overcoming his shortcomings, and he's developed his capabilities, and also he's signaling that I have achieved this capability and I'm willing to use it if required in future. I'm capable of operating in high altitude. I'm capable of operating in these sort of harsh situations, and I will use it this thing. Okay, so obviously, if you see that, it becomes a signaling, it becomes strategic coercion in case of hostilities come out, and also it is a future threat. Okay, threat to what? Threat to our infrastructure in the north, in the center, as well as in the eastern sector. It is threat to our surface forces, which are deployed there. Okay, so now you correlate with the other activities which I called about, the infrastructure development, ground forces have increased, deployment has increased. So obviously the threat level has increased. Okay, and the bottom line, as I always say, is in this case, you cannot ignore it. It cannot be ignored. You cannot sit idle and say, yeah, this is a regular exercise or something. You have to take cognizance of it, and you have to take some corrective action and make a plan and stick to it. I mean, it cannot be ignored at all. So that is the answer to the question, that it is all in one. It is whatever activity is there. It is a strategic signaling. We used as strategic coercion in future, and it will be a threat to us. Yeah, Adi.
Indeed, sir. See, one of the things that I think we've kind of hinted upon in one of our conversations earlier is that China probably sent 2 aircraft in this entire region. I'm not sure of the numbers. I'm just throwing a number out just for the creating an example or a base for a conversation, sir. Probably they would have sent 2 aircraft for this entire thing. And it's been reported so widely to the point that I'm having a discussion with you on this particular subject. You've obviously analyzed this entire thing when we had a conversation on the phone as well the other day. The question that I want to put across is what kind of hurts a lot of enthusiasts, analysts, nationalists, or I don't know how you want to put that across, but it hurts is what that hurts or what tricks people is that we always hear something like this from the other side, but we fail to kind of project the kind of power that we would also have in that place. And we did that during Snow Leopard in 2020. but we fail to kind of carry it forward. Would you feel that there
Yeah.
is a gap that the forces have left just due to sheer inactivity in that particular sector, sir?
Uh, no, I won't say that there is a gap. We have left something. It's not that. We are aware of what
If
is
I
going
may,
on.
sorry to interject you, sir, the gap in terms of the narrative, not in terms of the operation, sir.
Okay, narrative. Okay, we'll talk about narrative first. So what happens is, all right. So uh, narrative and the is how the narrative is created and how the perception develops. There are a few factors in that. And generally, you're right that we always get a feeling that our response is, I mean, not very aggressive, and that sort of perception we get. Okay, so to bring things in perspective, in my opinion, Air Force, having worked in the Air Force, I know that we take appropriate measures whenever such thing happens, and we take immediate actions to counter the whatever the situation is developing. And thereafter, we start monitoring very closely. I spent quite a few sleepless days and nights in higher appointments, monitoring the situation and keeping track of it. Okay, and then we also make a immediate plan for mitigation of the situation. We also make a midterm and long-term plan for the future, and these plans are periodically reviewed and mid-course correction is carried out. So all this is done. All right, but all this doesn't come out in the media, and so media, whatever comes out is a creates the perception. Okay, to my mind, in India, the problem of perception being that we are very mild and meek in our response is due to two, three reasons, combination of two, three reasons. One is a democratic setup. So what happens is in a democratic setup, anything which the ruling government does, it is always criticized, open to criticism by the opposition. So what happens is, there is a just general reluctance to commit publicly. Okay, even if something is done, it is not committed publicly because of these reasons. Okay. Secondly, we have total freedom of media. Okay, and at times what happens with so many channels and 24/7, things get at times blown out of proportion, and things get overdone. Okay, there are examples. There are this thing. Third is a factor which adds to it is, I think we have too many experts here. Okay, everyone has got an opinion on everything, whether he's qualified, not qualified, experienced, not experienced. As I always say, giving an opinion is the easiest thing if you don't have the responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my opinion, you need to have some checks and balances in this regard. Yeah, but as always, you have to have a balance between the freedom of the press, freedom of the individuals, and some checks and balances to ensure security. All right. Having said that, fine. I think corrective action also should be there. So to my mind, perception management is an important part of the warfare, and info warfare is another domain which have been added. And China, if you see example of China, which I keep giving in all our various discussions, they have a media very tight control. One media is for domestic and one is for international consumption. I'm not saying that we go China way. I'm not suggesting by any means. I'm just trying to tell you what sort of opposition will face. Info warfare they have identified as an important domain for warfare and non-kinetic warfare, and they have coupled it with cyber, space, and electronic and made a different service altogether to deal with this domain. So we need to also do some corrective actions. In my opinion, broadly speaking, if we need to have a three-level structure to deal with info warfare in future. One is individual service, where you have experts from various domains, from electronic warfare, from other medias. You monitor all the media responses from various directorates. Then we need to have a tri-service level organization, all three services combined at headquarter IDS or DMA level. And then we need to have a national level where all the agencies, all the departments chip into, deal with the perception and the narrative. All right. And these organizations need to work 24/7 in multi-domain and have an appropriate response mechanism to deal with whatever emerging situations and stories are coming out. And you need to have a proactive approach rather than only reacting to various contingencies. So, and last, as I said earlier, we need to have some sort of checks and balances between freedom and the responsibility. So I think these actions, in my suggestion, would help in our perception management and info warfare and the narrative control. Yeah, Aadi.
Thank you, sir. I think you've touched upon a very touchy topic. It's not something that people would want to talk about very freely, because that's something which does not fare well to the position that we would like to take as a country, and that's something which is interesting. And of course, the unnecessary politics, if I may, and I don't favor one on the other when I'm talking about national defense, but does take away from the situation and does probably restrict a lot of people from taking certain decisions that they would take in a more freer system. Let's get back to this. So when we are talking about the standoff, this is sort of a never-ending thing. I mean, and that's something that all of us have put across in our heads, that if not a breakthrough, things are going to remain like this for a while to come. Do you see air being a part of this standoff with the current sort of actions that have taken place? And I won't say incursions again.
Correct.
Would this be a part of the standoff in the future, or is this a time-bound exercise and it will get back to that ground kind of standoff again, sir?
Yeah. So you're asking me whether the standoffs which we have been having at regular interval, well, the character of the standoffs change.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking me. Okay, let me put a few things in perspective. Number one, all right, China has not resolved the boundary issue with us. Okay, and it suits his purpose whenever he feels like he, generates the heat. As I always call it, pressure cooker theory. He puts on the pressure cooker and then regulates the pressure so that it retains at a certain level. During pandemic time, he put on multiple pressure cookers all over, not against only in India, in the world it also. Okay, and not resolving the issue with India and Bhutan actually serves his purpose. And in this process of regular activities of skirmishes or aggressive attitude, like if you remember Chumar sector happened in 2015-16, then we had Dolam, then we had Galwan. Every 2 to 3 years, if you notice, have a slightly biggish activity than normal activities which carry on during the thing. Okay, and in this process, he keeps nibbling a little bit of territory or the vantage points. So trend is, as they call it, salami slicing is the old term. I don't think he's into salami slicing now. I think he's gone into the next phase of nibbling. I would say nibbling would be maybe higher chunks than salami slices. And the fear is that he should not get on to gobbling the territory. So I would say these three things. Okay. Now, of course, in my opinion, the standoff character will change. It will change. All right. How it will change is a few of the things. One is a new dimension has been added to that is the dimension of the air, which was not there very much earlier in these standoffs. Second, what is happening is rapid mobility, okay, in these standoffs. We did a very good job in Galwan when we mobilized. But if you see the infrastructure which is already existing in China and which is coming up now, they are going into, actually we are trying to catch up as far as infrastructure is concerned on the border. We are in the reach mode, that means reach up to the vantage points. They are going into speed mode. That means whatever infrastructure they have, they're improving them further. If you notice recently, the information came that they're making a new highway all along to the border, starting from north and the center, going up to eastern sector, connecting Xinjiang province to the Tibet. And there's a national highway GE 695. There is already a highway existing earlier, but they're going in for this new one, which is much faster, better. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now next change which will take place is, as it is, they are way ahead in space-based reconnaissance. Now, air-based tactical reconnaissance and air-based reconnaissance will also increase in these sort of situations. So the situational awareness will further be of a high standard as far as they're concerned. Now, the attitude will be more aggressive because earlier it was two-dimensional, maybe on the ground. Now they're three-dimensional with a vertical maneuvering also in the activities. All right. Next, if you see, there is a permanent deployment of ground forces as well as ground forces, surface forces, army. Now you will see that Air Force also, you'll have to have a permanent deployment of at least AD weapons, AD sensors, AD networks in these forward areas. All right. Then the cost of operation will increase for us because in peacetime also we'll have to have presence matching the deployment on the other side. So our forces will get tied up. Our forces will have to keep deploying in harsh climate. This thing to sustain them, we'll have to have logistics and supply chain. It will all cost money. All right. Their posture will be more aggressive. Now, another factor which worries is with the air element coming in, the brinkmanship is the another area where we need to be careful about. With the things happening so fast, and if the brinkmanship goes beyond certain level and somebody is trigger happy, it can lead to the escalation ladder being transited at a much faster pace than what happens generally in the surface standoffs. Get my point? When the air gets involved, the traveling on the escalation ladder up and down is much faster. So brinkmanship is another worry in these sort of situations. So in my opinion, these are various things which we will see in future as far as the standoffs are concerned because of the air activity coming into the loop. Yeah, Adi.
Is basically a level up, if I may take what you're trying to understand. And it's interesting to see the whole paradigm being compared with Taiwan, because that's where the thought process came out from, and one doesn't take away from the factor that they are basically doing similar kind of pushes in that region as well, sir. One thing that everybody would want to know, sir, there are and kind of two parts to my question as usual, which is one, what are the options that India has, and how do you think India is exercising those options? And I don't want to get into technicality, and I'm sure you're not wanting to tell us that particular thing as well, but at an overall level, what do we have with us to create certain advantages? Because 2 years back, when we kind of looked at the picture, we knew the factor that Indian Air Force has an edge over the Chinese in that particular theater. How do we build on that advantage, considering that the Chinese are also playing catch up? If we are playing catch up to them in terms of infrastructure, they're also playing catch up to us in terms of air power. Would you agree to it? And how do we kind of keep that advantage gap in our favor?
Yeah. So Adi, I will answer your question not only related to air power. Actually, I'll answer your question related to three levels, that is IF specific, then military in general, and maybe a few aspects at national level. Okay, and you very rightly said that, whatever advantages we had in terms of training and tactics and, terrain related, they are overcoming with technology and, capability building of their own. All right. So to IAF level, of course, at the moment we are slightly ahead, but, and you cannot keep relying on it unless you keep that pace on. So to my opinion, 5 or 6 areas where we need to develop and we continue working is, one is, keep concentrating on high altitude operations. Now it's become a fait accompli that since he's shown his cards, we need to continue manning, high altitude areas. We move our assets there and we operate from there and we create infrastructure there. So we need to concentrate on high altitude operations, because if you see all our areas in the north, as well as in the central sector, as well as in the eastern sector, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang, all are high altitude. varying in the height, but all high altitude. Okay, second is we need to have our air dominance fighters deployed ahead at a regular interval and capable of operating at a short notice from these places and operate at frequent intervals. Our Su-30s, MiG-29s, Mirage 2000s, they're already operating. Rafales we operationalized very quickly when they came in. So all these aircraft we need to keep operating in these areas. Then third thing is, of course, as I covered earlier, all the AD sensors and weapons we need to keep deployed in the forward areas and in the high altitudes. And we need to have a permanent presence, whether we like it or not, in these areas. Structure we have talked about, we need to concentrate in infrastructure development on not only operating surfaces as well as protective infrastructure. Both we need to concentrate. And maybe we need to go underground wherever possible. Okay, we need to do more exercises, more joint exercises to match whatever activity is going on across that side. And most important, as far as air power is concerned, we need to fill up whatever gaps we have. We do have certain gaps, and we need to fill them up at the earliest. So that are a few of the suggestions as far as Air Force is concerned, without going into technicalities, as you said. Now, as far as military is concerned, I think surface forces have reconciled to the fact that they are going to be deployed in these areas for a long time, and we need to sustain them. And so air sustenance is also important. Okay, then we need to have a joint approach, much more joint. And the theater command is not the only solution, but we need to have a joint plan, we need to have joint planning, we need to joint monitoring, we need to have joint execution. That is very important. Our structures do exist, we need to exercise them and follow them. Okay, next thing is, border meetings. So far, Corps Commander level or whatever level, Div level or whatever level, they're all surface forces only represented and inputs are taken from. Now with these new developments, I feel that the Air Force should be part of the border meetings. Whether it is being done or not, I'm not sure because I've retired 3 years back. But I feel that Air Force should be part of these border meetings. Okay, then our surveillance capability, we need to increase not only surface space-based, but to improve our situational awareness, we need to increase our surveillance capability. And whatever reorganization we are doing, I think we should keep in mind the kind of threat, and AD command is absolutely a no-go. I don't think it will meet the future challenges. And so these are militarily. Now coming to third level, Aadi, that is national level, I think time has come to spend on military. I keep saying this again and again. We need to spend money on military. I mean, the writing is on the wall, and we need to build up our capability and capacity. That is our deterrence value. Diplomatically, we need to take a stronger approach. China, understands only strength. And if he feels that you are weak, he tramples over you. So we need to have a stronger approach. And I think we need to have a slightly open mind to collective security. I'm not saying go straight into military alliance or so, but collective security, we need to have an open mind. If push comes to shove, we should resort to collective security till we have our deterrence value going up. Okay, so in that matter, we need to have a interoperability, better interoperability with our friendly countries, more frequent exercises and commonality of equipment and tactics and other things. Okay, then we need to strengthen our infrastructure, which I've already covered in all the three sectors: northern sector, that is Ladakh, central sector, and eastern sector. And the eastern sector has also got three subsectors, that is Sikkim, Tawang, and Ralp area, all along Arunachal. So we need to have our infrastructure. Diplomatically, once again, or I would say that we cannot afford to lose neighbors. And from air point of view, the first rung of neighbors which are most important, I think, are Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar. Okay, and then Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives are also important to us. And so our neighbors, we need to keep them in good humor and with the tilted towards us rather than towards China. So I think these are the few of the actions. There are many more. I mean, I've not covered comprehensively, but I've covered broadly that these are the few things which we need to do to deal with the new situation which is developing up. So I think in the end, Adi, I would say that if you join the dots of what is happening in the last 7 years, not only in the air domain, comprehensively, as far as infrastructure, as far as the boldness or aggression of the adversary, as far as surface operations, as far as air activity, if you combine everything in totality, the big picture is very, very clear. The writing is absolutely on the wall, and it is very clear which way we are heading and what we are going to face in future. There will be more aggression, more boldness. I think we need to act, and we need to act fast, and we need to act at a rapid pace. I think that is the time has come for that. Yeah, Adi.
One really you mentioned some very hard hitting stuff, so interestingly I'm not able to actually surmise the entire thing because it's a very fluid sort of a situation. It's a game of chess. I think both of them are trying to gain a one up on each other. There are mixed signals sometimes, there are direct signals sometimes, there are military coercion or military push sometimes. There's a whole lot which is happening, especially if you look at the India China domain. The diplomatic levels have been very active. uh, Efforts are there, but it's kind of a mixed bag of situations. But I think one of the key things that you mentioned out is that we must keep our powder dry, and that's something which is very, very critical. I mean, spending on military, spending on making sure our defenses are up to the mark, because uh, and this is just my personal analysis of the whole theory around the world was no big wars will happen because the world will not let it happen. Well, there is a big one which is going on for the past 5 months, and the world can't do anything about it, rather than just screaming and shouting, standing on the outside. One has to fight their own battles, and that's just about it. Are we ready for it, is the question I think you've asked very, very clearly, sir. And I'd really like to thank you, because it's a wake-up call that we all need to see. So we've got a couple of other subjects that we are working on. I'd just tell all the viewers there's very interesting subjects related to the space domain where sir is hinted to today. Till we plan that and do that conversation, I'd like to thank you once again for a comprehensive discussion. And till next time, sir. Jai Hind.
Thanks, Adi. And if you ask me to describe the whole situation in one line, I would say the dragon is getting his wings. I mean, he's got his wings, but now he's exercising those wings, and those wings are becoming more and more stronger, and he's able to fly better. So, dragon is taking to the air much more.
We need to find out who's sending the Red Bull to China, so that needs to get.
Yeah. So, until next time, Adi, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.